guys, welcome to my art channel. Thanks for stopping by to make some art with me. For more free art lessons, you could press the button below and subscribe right there on that red button. And I will see you really soon. Now let's get to making some art. Bye-bye. Hi guys, and welcome. Today we are going to work and be inspired by my favorite book author and artist, Carle. Carle wrote The Hungry Caterpillar and The Mixed Up Chameleon, and he's got this beautiful style that I always have enjoyed working in. The materials we're going to need are a few different pieces of mixed media paper, or drawing paper that's going to be able to hold some water. And we're going to need a piece of construction paper or cardstock that we're going to use for the background of our artwork today. We'll use scissors and glue stick, markers, oil pastels or crayons or crayons, and we're going to use some water and a paintbrush because we're going to turn our watercolor markers into watercolor paints. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make our different colored papers. If you've ever seen Carle's style, each character in his or object that are in his stories has a different texture to it. The way Carle does his artwork is he paints different types of designs on paper, and he uses that paper throughout his designs. So we're going to be painting a number of sheets. We're going to be using magic marker, and the reason I love water-based magic marker is because you can turn it into watercolor paint. So if I was to do a design like this on my paper with magic marker, I can then just use a little bit of water and paint over it, and you can see that it's turning the marker into paint. Okay, that made a little bit of a mess, but that's okay. So the more I rub onto my magic marker, the more color I get. So that's a technique we're going to be working with the magic markers. So first what I want you to do is take your first sheet of paper and do some designs with magic marker, and you could do different colors. And they could be simple designs of just geometric shapes, different types of lines, squiggly lines, spiral lines, wavy lines, zigzag lines, as long as you're using magic markers which are water-based. And those type of markers are different than permanent markers. Water-based magic markers are the ones you could wash off your hands and wash off your clothes, whereas permanent markers won't come off your clothes. They'll eventually come off your skin though. So I'm just going to do some different types of designs, and I'm going to fill up my entire paper. And I'm not drawing a picture. I'm just making patterns and having fun with different lines and shapes, because we're going to end up, for our project today, cutting out these pictures, cutting apart these pictures that we're doing. So we don't want to spend too much time drawing a perfect scene of something and then have to cut it up, right? So I'm just having fun with different lines and shapes. Lots of bright colors. So I have covered my paper with different colors, and now I'm going to come along with my water on a paintbrush and just kind of paint over with the water. The different areas, and this is going to cover all that white background, and the paint's going to kind of run into each other, and that's okay. Now, if you're not using mixed media paper and you're using something that's more like printer paper, you don't want to get your paper too wet, because printer paper isn't made to handle a lot of water, and it'll start getting very weak, and you'll start seeing the pulp, and you'll get like those little bumpies on it, and eventually it will rip. So if you're using printer paper, go easy on the water. So I just painted this in and smeared my paint around to get some color, and I'm going to put that aside to dry. And I'm going to go to my next sheet, and I'm going to do something similar or different. Maybe this one I'll just do different color lines, because what I'm really trying to do right now is create some interesting papers that I could use for a collage. So here I only did 2 colors, and I'm going to go and I'm going to do the same technique. I'm going to add water to it and turn it into like almost a watercolor paint. And the top will be green, and I'll have those nice lines in the background, and the bottom will be purple. Like that. And I'm going to put that aside to dry. And I cut about 6 pieces of paper. So I'm going to do 3 pieces with this magic marker watercolor technique, and then I'm going to move on to a different type of technique, and I'm just going to use my crayons. And I'm not spending a whole lot of time on creating the designs on these papers, because I know that I'm going to use them just as decorative collage papers, and then eventually they're going to be cut apart. My idea is to just really fill out these papers with some interesting color and designs. So I've done this crazy design here, and I'm going to go over it again with my water. And by doing that, I'm filling out the background and covering up the white space with color. And you can certainly do papers like this in any way you like. You can use watercolor paints if you have, or temperas, or even acrylics, and just use them. This is pretty. I like the colors in here. And just wait till it dries, and then you could cut them up and use them. So next I'm going to just put this aside. And I'm going to take out my crayons. And the reason I'm using both is because when you do the magic marker, and especially do it with the water over it, it makes it more subtle and not as vibrant. A little bit transparent. The crayons are very strong and very vibrant colors, so I want to have a mix of both in my finished artwork. So I'm just going to do some designs here. And again, I'm keeping with something more abstract and focusing just on lines and shapes. And when I'm done with this, I'll show you the difference in the vibrancy or the brightness of how the crayons look compared to the watercolor paints. Now again, I work pretty quickly. You can certainly pause the video at any time and take your time working on these papers and then come back to it to finish the project. So my goal is to really just get as much color onto these papers as possible. So you can see how this is very vibrant, whereas compared to this is very light. But they still are going to have a really nice effects, just two different effects on the finished artwork. And I prefer really bold colors. You're welcome to use any colors you like. These are very, very bright primary colors here. You could certainly use earth tones, which are colors that are closer to things you find in the earth, like a green for the grass and browns for the soil, things like that. There's different types of color families. Some colors are very, very bright and some are very kind of calm. I'll put some earthy tones here, like this brown is certainly an earthy color. And I'm just kind of putting all sorts of colors together, seeing what comes up, what happens, how it looks. So this is a mix of primary and secondary colors and earth tones. This paper is a little bit crazy. Doesn't make a whole lot of artistic sense right now, but I think it'll be interesting once I put it into the finished project. So that's very different in comparison to something like this or any of the marker things. You can see how vibrant they are. And I'm going to do the last page. Fill it with as much color as I can. Okay, so I have my last page done. I have 6 different pages. I'm going to put this away so we can work on our collage. Okay. So if you've noticed, some of my pictures here that I use water on, some of the papers I use water on, they're starting to curl up. So I'm actually going to put them underneath this box to see if I can flatten them a little bit. And what you're going to need now is a pencil, a scissor, and your glue stick and a background paper. And we are going to make a vase with flowers. So what you want to do first is look at your papers. I know some of mine are drying, so I'm going to choose maybe one of these papers to start with, because we're going to make the vase first. And I think I'm going to use maybe this crazy paper to make my vase. So I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to use a black marker so you can see it, but you can certainly do it with a pencil. And I'm going to draw a vase. Now I want to make sure that I have enough room on my paper for the vase and then some flowers. So my vase is going to be probably the size of my hand. So I'm going to have some paper left. So I'm just going to measure my hand, and at the top of my middle finger I'm going to put a point, and I know that my vase should not be any taller than that point. So I measured my hand to my middle finger there, like that. To make a vase, you're just going to do a straight line on top, and you can make it any shape you like. You're going to make a straight line on top, and then you're going to bring that top in on either side just a little bit, like so. And then the bottom is going to be pretty much an oval. Like so. So a little trick to cut it so it's really symmetrical on both sides is to take your paper, fold it in half, and just cut one side of the vase. This way the second side will come out exactly the same. So I'm just going to follow those lines and cut my vase out. Like so. Okay. I am going to hold on to all my paper scraps because I'm going to be making a design. I'm going to be making flowers. So I'm going to need all this extra paper. But I'm going to first figure out where on the paper I want to put my vase. Do I want to put it off center? Do I want to put it on the center? And I think I'm actually going to put it a little off center to make the composition more interesting, and maybe I'll put a flower next to it when I get to making the flowers. So I'm going to just use my glue stick and glue that right on there. Just make sure you get the edges when you're gluing, because those are the things that kind of peel up. So I do really like this. At first I didn't like the design I did on paper, but now that I made it a vase, I think it's quite interesting. So now I'm going to take my papers out from here. Should hopefully be dry enough to work with. If not, you can wait a few more minutes so you can hit them with the hair dryer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make flowers by layering the papers. So I'm going to use about 3 layers per flower. So to do that, you're going to pick your first sheet. And you can make a circle or you could make petals like so, an outline, and then you're going to cut that out. Okay, so I cut my first flower out. So what I want to do with that is I want to find something to go in the middle of the flower. So I'm thinking maybe I'll use a piece of this. And instead of making a circle, I might make another kind of petal-like shape that's a little bit smaller. Got 4 petals on it, like that. And I'm going to cut that out. So I have these two, and I'm going to glue this on top of my petal and make it a double layer there, flower. Like so. And I'm just going to put it aside for now because I'm not sure. I might add another 3rd layer or not. I'm not sure. I'm just going to put it up there, and then I'm going to make another flower. So with this flower, we made these bumpy lines for the petals. You can do that again, or you can even make a flower. You can make it into a circle. Some flowers have a lot of large petals to them. Some flowers, the petals are condensed and they're more rounded, like a big ball. So this one is going to be more like that. And I think I'm going to use, for the inside of this flower, I'm going to use some of this crazy funky background that I wasn't sure I was going to like, but I do like it now. And I'm going to just make another kind of circular shape, just randomly on the back. And I just cut that out, like so. And then I'm going to glue it into the middle of my flower. And I'm going to put that one aside for now. I might add to it. Actually, you know what? I am going to add a 3rd. I think this layer is just all green, so I want something a little bit more fun and funky. So maybe I'll use this paper and make one more larger circle. It's going to be larger than the first 2. I just kind of measured my circle by eye. And I'm just going to cut it out. It's kind of more like an oval. Not the best circle. It's more like an oval, but that's okay. And I'm going to glue everything right into the middle there. Yeah, I like that better. That's a little more interesting as a flower. So I have my 2 flowers right now, and oh, these are fun. I'm going to put them aside because I'm going to make a couple more. And maybe this flower I'm going to make in the shape of a heart. I've never seen a heart-shaped flower for real, but why not? We're using our creative imaginations here. And you can cut out any shape you like. These are just some ideas. So I cut out the heart, and this is what I have. And I'm going to cut out another little heart to go inside. Like so. that's very much alike. See, these two are very close in color, so I'm not crazy about that. So I'm going to look for a different middle for this heart. And I'm going to save this maybe for another flower. I think it needs something very different. Maybe this. See, I keep going back to this. I didn't think I would like it. I used some strange colors that I don't usually put together. I experimented, but I'm actually really liking the way it looks. You never know, so it's really important to experiment when you're working with different art mediums. Don't worry if you make a mistake. You can always fix it. And sometimes mistakes turn out to be the best part of your artwork. So yeah, I like this a lot better. It's got a nicer contrast, meaning that this small piece stands out better from the back piece. They're not too much alike. This heart was very close to this one, so you could hardly see it. I'm just gonna put that on there. And you're probably wondering, well, how many flowers should I make? And that's entirely up to you. However many flowers you want. I'm going to make a bunch more because I think this is nice, but I definitely think we need some more flowers here. So let's see. I'm going to make, I really like this round looking flower, so I'm going to make another one. It's actually more of a big oval shape, like that. You might want to make a square or a triangular flowers. You never know, it could be really interesting in your composition. And I wonder if I could add that heart to this flower and how that would look. So maybe I'll do that. I might even add a black outline to make it stand out a little bit more. Sometimes it needs just a little extra. Now I have 4 flowers. When I make a composition, I usually like to use an odd number because it kind of, when odd numbers make things a little off balance, and I find that that's more interesting to the eye. So I'm going to make another flower, and this one I'm going to make a really big one, and I'm going to use petals on this one. I think we need a really big flower in there. So I made the petals. And then I'm going to cut that out, and it looks like it's going to be quite an interesting flower there. That's really pretty. And now I need the center for that flower. And I think I'm going to use this light color stuff that I made. And again, I made just like little petals. And they're not exactly the same as that, but that's okay because every petal on a flower is not exactly the same. They're all a tiny bit different. I'm going to glue that on. Now, if you're gluing onto craypas, just a note, because this is all craypa, you're going to need some extra glue because sometimes, because it's oil-based, the craypas, the glue doesn't stick that well. So I just glue that in the middle, and I think I'm going to make a round circle in the middle of that flower. Maybe I'll use something like this one because that's really super bright. And I want to get it on like the yellows and the reds in here. And so I just made a circle, and I'm going to cut that out. So I'm going to glue that on in the middle. That's fun. See, I have the different layers, and I have some craypa layers and some watercolor marker layers. I really like the way that looks. I definitely have a lot of flowers here. So I do want one big flower to be on the side here because I left a lot of space here. So I'm going to work on something nice and bright and big. Maybe I could use this color. And I'm going to make another petaled flower. Make it really big this time because it's going to sit on the side of my paper. I'm going to cut this guy out. That's pretty. And I think that's going to be a great size for there. I definitely want some bright color. Where's that crazy thing? I'm definitely going to use this in the inside. I'm going to make a circle on the inside there. Just like that. And see, this is why I keep my colorful scraps of paper, because I like to do a lot of collage and I'm always looking for different papers. And you never know, you might just need a tiny little piece. So I'm going to put the tiny little piece right in the middle there. And let's see, oh, that's really super cute. So now I'm going to just take a look and arrange my flowers a little bit before I glue them down. I'm just going to spend time figuring out what flowers I like best and where I like them. So maybe something like that. Okay, I'm just going to move them slightly, and I'm just going to start gluing. Glue my flowers down. Now some of your flowers can hang over your vase a little bit. You can even go off the paper if you like. So I'm just planning as I go. And if you don't like something, you have to pull it off right away when you're using the glue stick. Otherwise it'll dry and it'll rip the paper. So if you say, oh, I wish I didn't put it there, pull it off immediately. And then you could try putting something else there that you might like better. Because I think that was too dark and there wasn't enough what I call contrast in there. This I think has a little more contrast. And you can make the vase of flowers going high up, or you can make it coming down to the side, or a little bit of both. I think I'm going to do a little bit of both. And this is how Eric Carle, that artist who wrote The Hungry Caterpillar that we spoke about before, this is how he does his, not exactly, but this is the kind of idea he uses when he makes the drawings for his books. He creates the paper first, then cuts the paper into the shapes of the things that he wants in his story. And I'm going to put my last flower down on the side, like that. And you can continue to make more flowers. I honestly feel like this can use a couple more flowers in here, maybe a small one here. So I'm going to make some circular flowers. So as I'm creating the flowers and as I'm putting it together, I'm kind of going over in my mind if it needs more, if it needs less. Maybe in the middle of this flower, I'll put a triangle. That's kind of interesting. I like that. Oops, I lost my glue there. Sometimes that happens. Yeah, I think that fills it out a little bit better. And I think I'm going to make one more flower up here and really fill out this piece. And I can make a flower any shape I want. And I think I'm going to give it petals like the other flowers. And I'm just going to cut really freely. I didn't even draw it this time. Put some round pieces in the middle. That might be too big. And I'm just really playing around now. I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing. I'm just kind of letting the process of creativity take over. Making different types of flowers. Oops, I lost my glue again. And this flower I'm actually putting, sometimes I like when I'm doing artwork to go over the borders that were expected to use. Like most people expect, oh, you have to work within the paper, but you really don't. You can just go off the paper and it's still makes it really interesting because your eye is going to follow this all over the entire paper. Okay, that is really one funky vase of flowers. And here is what I have. And I think for my last detail, I'm going to actually go back and do some outlining with a black marker because I like things to really stand out. And I think that this would help to have things stand out. And you could choose to do this or not. But I'm going to show you what it looks like. When you put outlines in. And I'm just outlining mostly the larger parts of the flower. It is a little hard to outline on top of the crayons because of that oil base. If you have a permanent marker, you might be able to get some outlining on there. But it does kind of get caught in the felt of the marker and block it up a little bit. So you just have to see how I'm cleaning off the crape off my marker so I can continue drawing with it. Now you don't have to do this. I just chose to do it because I felt like there's so much color in here that maybe a black line would help your eye to see the shapes of the flowers a little bit better. And here we have our crazy Eric Carle style vase of flowers. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope that you take this technique and use it to create other pictures as well, not just flowers, but just like Eric Carle did, and animals and people and all sorts of things. I'll see you really soon. Bye-bye.